All right. Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another Learning Tech Talks, where I got to think of a new line because we're not just exploring the landscape of learning technology anymore. We're talking workplace tech, upskilling. We got a lot of things going on. And today's another one of those days because, Adam, I don't think you would nicely put yourself in the category of learning tech, would you? I don't think you would consider yourself that.
We kind of exist at the intersection of future of work
Okay.
and ed tech. It depends on what
Okay.
day
Well,
and what
all right.
who I'm
Future
talking
work.
with. So sometimes I go
All right.
full ed
All
tech,
right.
and sometimes I go
We're on the fray. We're on the fray today. But no, I mean, if you haven't seen the post, we'll get into it. We'll actually explain what it is. So I don't want to spoil it, but we're on the fray. I do think this is future work, but it does tie to upskilling, kind of the talent market right now and everything that's happening there. And then early talent, which is an untapped resource, I think, in my experience, is vastly underutilized right now. So we're going to get into that. Adam's joining me today, but we gotta warm things up a little bit. So I actually, normally people answer this right away because we get into it, but you were busy looking for a USB converter, and so we didn't even ask like, where were you? So I'm going to learn this one too. So where are you in the world today, Adam?
I am in beautiful, sunny Providence, Rhode Island. We just got 6 inches of snow last night. Yeah. So.
Okay. You know what? We share that because we got 6 inches of snow last night. And in between meetings this morning, I had to sneak out and snow blow because we live on a hill and it's a death trap if you don't clear the snow right away. So I can at least relate to that. And you got a pretty cool setup because you would look at that background. If anybody watching might look at that background and think, oh, definitely in an office. That's clearly an office because that's a really cool scribble board on the back. But that's not. That's your dining room, right?
It's my house, which I share with my co-founder and our lead designer. You never know when inspiration's going to strike. You got expo markers. You get to draw. You get to decide what we'll have for dinner tonight.
But you do know there's a good chance it's happening in the dining room. So what a great place to put it. I love it.
It's great for parties.
I don't think I can convince my wife on it. I don't think she'll go for that. But
I don't think you try hard enough, Chris.
I'll see. Maybe she's listening right now. Or yeah. No, I think we're good. We'll see what happens. Okay. Well, I'm in Waukesha where I always am. Now let's transition over to the other one because I haven't heard this one yet, and I am curious. What was because we are talking early talent. So Adam, what was your first job out of college? And I'll let you kind of decide like finding your way or real job. You just will have to clarify.
Yeah. It's a loaded question, Chris, because I just dove right into building the startup right out of college. We got into an accelerator program that gave us a very small amount of grant funding that was enough to basically cover rents and food in Providence for the summer. And my folks figured, hey, he'd spend a summer there kind of post-grad, and then it wouldn't work out, and then he'd get a real job. But we kept making progress. We kept making improvements. We kept raising more funding and hitting more milestones. So this is all I've done since I graduated. But when I was an undergrad, I was lucky enough to do internships in finance, in healthcare, in independent film distribution. I spent a summer trekking across the Arctic Circle as well. So I've had a whole bunch of experiences, and the first job I ever had was
you say that so casually. Well, trekked across the Arctic Circle, because we've all been there.
Everyone needs a great Alaskan adventure, Chris. It's something that we all need in our lives.
Okay. All right. Well, so mine on this one, I had like a couple bumbled starts. I was an insurance salesperson for a bit, and that didn't go too well. And I was a teacher for a bit, and then I did what else? I did something else. Like my first, like what I would say real job, I was a Camel cigarettes sales rep. Right? Came with a company car. It didn't last very long. Wasn't one of my proudest moments. And man, after you just tell people you work for Big Tobacco, just watch the looks they give you. I got out of that pretty quick.
I can't wait to see what that recording shows my face.
Yes, from middle school.
Hard to beat.
I know. Well, you know what? You got lots of cool swag. I got to say that. I got poker chip. I still got a bunch of stuff left. Anyway, all right. So let's talk about it. We got to know you a little bit in terms of your background. So in the startup space from the beginning, but you decided to make, like, what's the founder story on this? Because obviously you came out of school, you started this, and you said, you know what, I'm gonna make this app. Where did that come from? We probably should define it first. What is it?
So we are the largest college freelance platform. So we help college students and recent grads find freelance work at startups, at companies, at emerging brands, at agencies, doing everything from marketing to design to biz ops. We started at Brown. We're at 1,800 colleges today. So yeah, that's a little bit of what we are today, but that's not where we started by any means.
Okay.
I was always really into videography. I mean, I mentioned that my first job was basically a freelance videographer. And I think I had that gig when I was in high school. My folks got me a video camera when I was in the 6th grade. I had been diagnosed with ADHD that year. I had always had a really hard time focusing long enough to learn how to do very basic things like learn how to tie my shoes or memorize my mom's phone number. And, struggled in school in some ways. But when I unwrapped that video camera, it just unwrapped this whole new field for me that I just couldn't take my focus off of. Everything from the technology behind the camera to the direct framing to the editing to thinking about who's it for. And, I remember going in middle school making videos and having it displayed in our Monday morning, all middle school meetings, and just getting the entire middle school to erupt in laughter. It was just, I will never remember those. I will never forget those moments. I will always remember them. So all through high school, I was, I founded the filmmaking club. I built out a portfolio, found myself at Brown in 2013, 2014, 2015, graduated 2017. But as an undergrad, I kind of found myself between, I started off doing Brown's version of film studies, which they call modern culture and media. Brown doesn't have a film school. Okay. They talk a lot about theory, and I took basically every production class they had to offer in the first semester or two. And they put me into the theory classes, and I hated them. I liked making things. And I was doing a bunch of student film projects. I was gaffing, and I was an assistant director. And we would have, a crew of 25 students putting together these really elaborate short films, which was really fun. I had an on-campus job in media services. And then I was running down these internships, like the ones I alluded to before. But I felt like there was such a you talk about a false dichotomy in some of the stuff that some of the content you talked about. And there was this false dichotomy in terms of an on-campus job versus an internship. And it was one or the other. And there was nothing in between. And I felt that my skills as a videographer were being underutilized. I felt I knew so much. I could edit, I could produce, and I wanted to do more of those.
And going and working in the college cafeteria was not an acceptable alternative.
As Tim Brady, a partner at YC and the first employee at Yahoo, described it, slinging hash in the cafeteria, and you can either, and so we built this platform initially to, our worldview at the time was smaller. So we said, let's build a platform where students can do other things for other students. So, hey, I know Final Cut Pro, I can teach you Final Cut Pro. Or, hey, this person knows French, they can teach me French. Kind of like a Craigslist of sorts for college students. So we decided to go and build that. We made a lot of mistakes in terms of approaching that, which we can dive into if this is more of an entrepreneurial startup kind of journey kind of a thing. And we launched that in 2017. It did not work.
It did not work.
In our first year, we did $58 of transactions.
Wow. You're not going to, mom and dad wouldn't have been too proud on that one.
Not enough that, I couldn't even get, when we actually get our fee from that and split it between my co-founder and I. I mean, I can't buy myself a burrito bowl at Chipotle. I mean, it was really
didn't pay for the whiteboard. Yeah.
Didn't pay for the whiteboard. Yeah, dude, that thing is like a $500 whiteboard. Those things are expensive. So anyway, that's kind of how we got started. And the kind of the whole journey has been just sticking with it, a lot of persistence, learning how to listen, learning how to sell less, making a lot of iterations to our hypotheses, our product, our market, and ultimately evolving into what I described initially, which is a freelance marketplace.
So let's talk about this. Cause I mean, for me, it's been a bit, I still remember right out of school it's a weird time. And again, like you said, the false dichotomy when you're in school is also really awkward. Cause you're like, well, I can work on campus at some crap job that has nothing to do with what I want to do. But then you also don't really know what you want. Not everybody got a camera in 6th grade and went, I found my calling, type of a thing. So like, you don't really know what to do, but there is this space in between where it's like, well, mom and dad want me to go get an internship at GE, and I don't want to do that, but I also don't want to flip burgers in, the Eagle's nest either. So what do I do? So I am curious though, like, what is it? You talk to recent college grads right now. How are they handling this? Because you do hear this a lot right now, where that age range is struggling to find solid work, and there's not a lot of easy transition periods for them.
Yeah, I mean, if the last stat I looked at, you can fact check me on this. It was around like 30 to 40%.
I won't. Most statistics are made up anyway.
30 to
so
40%.
Sounds good.
30 to 40% of recent college grads are underemployed, meaning that they're currently in jobs that don't require a college degree. And I'm not talking about Facebook not requiring a college degree to go work, as an engineer there. But these are people who graduate and they enter the service industry, and nothing wrong with that. But if you have $100,000 in college debt, it's really hard to pay that back.
That first student loan payment, I remember when that came in and you're like, oh, this is like every month for the next 30 years. I wasn't expecting that.
So, there's a really large segment of people who just like, they don't know what they want to do after they graduate. Maybe they can't get a job at a GE. So they're forced to kind of go work, working minimum wage. And what's been really exciting seeing in the last couple of years is the emergence of a whole new category of work become more generally adopted. Contract work, freelance work. Nearly half of the U.S. workforce are actually contractors, not W-2 employees. I mean, and this includes like construction contractors and things like that, but an increasing proportion of them are what we think of like gig workers, and we think about freelancers. So we look at that shift in the labor market and say, how can we leverage that trend to basically provide these recent grads more avenues and more pathways to employment and to gaining experience and to experimenting with a whole bunch more. So like we have an amazing student. Her name is Grace, graduated UConn in 2021. And since then, she's worked with, I think, 6 different clients on our platform and is generating a full-time income now as a freelancer. And she's been able to get exposure to so many different industries, so many different types of companies, different types of marketing, as a junior level marketer doing freelancing, that she has found her calling and she knows what she wants to do and can better articulate how to create value, which is going to give her so much more on her resume in terms of if she ends up wanting to get a full-time job or finding that right opportunity at the right startup. She has an amazing resume of experiences that it would have taken someone 10 years to build, but she's built it in a year.
Okay. Well, and you know what's interesting about that is, I mean, I just think about now how many people as seasoned career professionals, if you were like, have you considered freelance? Many of them would just go blank and go, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, I have no idea what that even looks like or where I was. So you think about that right out of college. Nobody's teaching you that. So, I mean, I remember at that age, I would have never thought, hey, I have these skills. I could probably pick up a couple different things, because to me, that would sound like, I don't even know, like, what am I going to walk around and try and say, hi, would you like me to do this for you? No. Okay. Well,
like
I'll walk
said,
next door.
There's even these seasoned professionals who don't even know what freelancing is, and they don't even know where to start.
I know.
Right. And it's scary. It's like, I don't even know. It's like the same thing with entrepreneurship. Like, I don't even know how to start building a company. Same thing.
Right. I have this great idea, but I have no idea what to do about it.
Where to even start. And that is just further exacerbated when you talk about these more emerging folks who haven't had as much exposure to these things in life. So part of our mission is to really demystify and destigmatize freelancing and make it something that maybe we don't even call it freelancing to these students. It's just part-time work. It's just work. It's just paid.
It's just work.
They can do remotely for cool companies doing cool things that help them build a resume. They can do it year round, right? It's not, to wait to the summer and apply into an internship program that's, highly structured.
You get one of 30 opportunities, and now you put all your chips on that, and then it didn't work. And you're like, well, I guess it's back to, bagging groceries.
Yeah. So how can we empower these folks? How can we give them the tools they need to go out there? And maybe they're not going door knocking right away and finding their own book of clients. But like, can we give them some of that infrastructure? Like, hey, we'll help you with invoices. We'll help you with taxes. We'll help you find some leads. We'll give you that structure. We'll make it feel friendly. We'll make it safe. We'll give it structure. We'll give you the tools you need to be successful. And it just makes it easy. And it just makes it feel like, oh, this is just, I'm doing work and I'm doing it through Pangea. And it's a great place.
Well, you're removing, I mean, if you think about it, again, for folks who haven't freelanced, you're removing a lot of the barrier pieces that people struggle with, which is, okay, like, how do I set this up? Like, because walk me through the process. Let's say because is it only college grads, or are you letting people like in school who have skills be like, hey, who says you only have to choose one of these like in school jobs? Because college is expensive too when you're there. We talked about our Halo houses. I mean, those things weren't free. Buying that many Xboxes, it didn't fund itself.
Absolutely. So, actually we skew currently towards undergrad, and we skew particularly towards first generation and low income during our last demographic survey. So we have kind of, we're growing into more of the recent grad market where, again, folks are like, work is more their priority in some ways and they have more time to do it. So, what we're trying to basically do is, find these hungry students when they're freshmen, when they're sophomores, when they're juniors, maybe before they're even eligible to get an internship at a company like Lyft.
Yeah, because you usually can't do that like freshman, sophomore year. You've got to be towards the end.
And then when you're applying into those jobs, you're one of 1,000 applicants, right? So it's how are you?
And they have 10 spots.
Exactly. It's hard to get into them, like Harvard Law School, as an example, which is hard enough. So
not if you trek in Alaska all the time. I hear that's that's just
that helps your resume pop out of the ATS there. So we're trying to build a trusted relationship with these folks when they're really early in their career, taking a bet on them before other folks will, kind of like a really early stage VC fund,
and helping them figure out their skills too. Like what do you because we don't. And again, I told you we were going to just sit and riff off each other on this, but I think this is another challenge. So we talked about the challenge with the freelance piece, and we'll keep talking about this, but also this challenge with skills, because honestly, when you think about, I just think now, well seasoned into my career, I can do this, but early on, and I think a lot of people, even well seasoned into their career, they struggle to speak in terms of skills. They can say, well, I had this job, I worked here. But if you said, what skills do you have? A lot of people kind of, I don't really know how to articulate that very well. And I can tell you right out of the gate, coming out of college or in college, I couldn't have answered that question, which kills it, because then it's like, well, this job requires 3 years of experience. I can't articulate my experience and I don't have any jobs on my resume. I'm dead in the water. And this is helping break that down.
It's projects. I mean, when I talk to recruiters at like, Fortune 100, 500 companies, say, what do you look for in candidates? They're like, I want to see people who took a project from A to B, and I want to see the results, right? Like when I look at hundreds or thousands of resumes, right? And it's the resumes that say like, hey, I started an Instagram account and grew it to 10,000 followers. That speaks something versus like, hey, I work for a company and I manage their Instagram. Right. And it's like, well, what did you actually know how to do it? And what were the results? So what we're trying to do is provide a bit of education. And I think it's something that we'll have to develop a lot more down the road. Like, how do we educate folks, like how to advertise themselves and how to speak about their experiences and how to talk about.
Well, which Kim brought up is a really important piece, that like that second layer of how do we help shape that for folks, because figuring out the freelance part, that's one thing. But it's also this, how do you articulate, like you said, I mean, I love that example. It's one thing to say, well, I manage the Instagram account. Okay. Like, what does that mean? You copy and pasted, posts. I don't know what they're called. Tweets, like whatever, you just paste things in there. Like, no, I grew it from 0 to 10,000 and had this kind of engagement with our community. Well, that's a different story.
So if you allow me to share my screen here for a second, Chris, something we released is called the Emerging Talent Program, right? So when we saw this as an issue in terms of like, there's just so many things that these folks just don't even know, right? I mean, and if we just sat down with them for an hour and walked them through it, like coaching and some mentorship, they'll get it. So we started this program that was absolutely free. We've had more than 1,000 students go through it, and we talk all about like how to basically top 10 tips, like how to stand out. We talk about how to secure clients, how to talk about yourself, how to get onboarded after you get hired, and then how to manage your income, manage your taxes, and things like that. And these are just like 1 hour. These are 4 1-hour workshops, and this is open enrollment now. We're doing another program this April. I do all the workshops, and we found that when students go through these programs, they're 5 times more likely of getting jobs on our platform, because the way they structure their profiles and the way they talk about their experiences, and we give them tactics on how to crack that classic chicken and egg problem of how to get a job without experience if I can't get experience at a job. And a lot of it comes down to doing like personal projects. So, I hired a student just last week who hadn't really had much background in much, but, she hopped on a call with me and said, hey, I had a chance to look at your LinkedIn, Adam. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot more here. And took my LinkedIn profile and then put it in like Canva and like overwrote my headline and like redid my cover photo and like rewrote and I was like, you're hired. It's great. Like, you just showed me that
you just demonstrated the skills that you have and what you bring to the table.
Exactly. And I gave her a job, and we've been working with each other for 4 weeks. And, she kind of helps me. She's like, we want to tell your story. She'll watch this entire thing and pick out a bunch of the tidbits, structure them into posts that I'll review, and then she'll post them on my LinkedIn. Which again, they're my voice, but she helps. And I hired her because she had no previous experience, but she demonstrated that she had the skills to do it. Yeah. And that's something when I tell all of these students, one of the things I talk about is like, think about your clients, right? Think about the client, the contract having a value. Like, how much are you willing to spend to get that contract? Like, what's the cost of acquiring that client? And, you're not going to pay, $100 to get that contract out of your pocket, but maybe you can spend 5 hours of time doing some of these projects, looking at their website, coming up with ideas, doing these kind of little briefs that I guarantee will put you into the top 10, like the 90th percentile of anyone that they're talking to. And it's something that anybody can do. And it's a great opportunity just to demonstrate value before you kind of get a job.
Well, and I love, and again, it sounds like, and again, the next place I want to go is kind of walk through what the process looks like so people can, because I think there's, and this again, to me is something that, not only there's probably people who are going to watch and listen to this who go, oh my gosh, I need to call my kid right now and be like, hey, I've been on your case about, so there's that. But I think there's a lot of parallels that we can connect to learning and development, because while you're focused on that early career audience, this is a very similar challenge that organizations are dealing with their existing workforce, where it's like, we have lots of people that can do really incredible things, many of which have nothing to do with the job they're in. They may not even be doing it in this job, and they're sitting going untapped. And this underutilized piece you described, where it's like, yeah, well, I took this job because I've been here and it's comfortable and whatever. Really, I can do about 30 other things, but nobody ever asks, and it's not really relevant to my job. And this whole talent mobility and almost internal career gig economy exists, but a lot of companies are struggling with how to tap into that. So I think there are a lot of parallels that we can take from this.
There's so many things for me to chew in there, Chris. I mean, one thing I want to drill in on is like the idea that there are people in your organization who have 30 other skills, but it's like not in their areas of responsibility, and they're not.
It's not on their resume either.
And it's so one of the things that I try to coach these really talented folks to do when they get a client, because sometimes they get hired to do like one thing, and I tell them to identify problems and present solutions. So if you see an opportunity, like, hey, like, we're doing Instagram, but we're not using anything on TikTok, and I saw some other companies doing a TikTok, would you like me to kind of like spend some more hours and kind of run down this opportunity? And I can tell you, almost every single time that someone on my team comes to me with like a pitch of like a project that they can work on, I'm thrilled, because especially if it's a good idea and I see the ROI.
I know.
Like, great, go hunt it down. And then people end up working on the things that they want to work on. And you can also inspire that when people really understand like why what they're doing is important and why what the organization is doing is important. Are they there for the paycheck, or are they there because it's like their calling and their purpose and they're passionate about the kind of work that they're doing?
Well, and when you tap into what you just, because I'm with you. When people come to me and go, hey, I have this really, like, I love that. When it's like, I love that you saw something and you came up with an idea of what you can do about it. And you know what? Like, let's do this. Now, fundamentally, it requires people, leaders, and organizations to think differently about their workforce. And I think that's a transition that companies are going to have to deal with. Because the thing is, people are doing it anyway. I mean, people are doing it anyway. So how are you going to navigate this? And this idea of, well, I hired you into this job and this is what that job does. And that's all I want you doing. And that's all there is to do. So it doesn't really work anymore in this market. Talent is much more fluid, and organizations need to acknowledge that. And I think creating the internal ability to do that is huge because your people are more invested.
It's huge. And in kind of like the way that, I think this is like something I got out of Simon Sinek's TED talk on Start With Why, of like, people don't care like what you do, they care why you do it in some ways. And whenever I give anyone a task, I really try to make sure they understand like why it's important. So for us, it's like about getting everyone around like our North Star KPIs, which for us is the number of active engagements on our platform. So it's the number of basically students that are, or Pangeans that are working with clients and are actively invoicing and growing that number. And what's great is there's a lot of different ways to affect that KPI, right? I mean, maybe it's a little bit retention. Maybe it's getting new contracts. Maybe it's getting larger contracts. Maybe it's getting more students or higher quality students. Maybe it's getting more alignment in terms of, there's a lot of different like hypotheses that one can present that basically address that. So when I talk to someone who's maybe going to become like our next community manager, as an example, and I say like, you see like, I need you to go get students. And like, well, why? I'm like, well, I want you measuring how many students are sending applications and proposals on our platform every single week, and the percentage of those that hit kind of our standards of quality in terms of like who we think is basically going to like perform a really good job. And then I want you to grow that number, because that's how you can affect this part of our funnel that affects like the core KPI, which is the thing that everyone is aligned behind and is excited about. And it's a thing that, I got from one of my advisors from LinkedIn, where it's not like a conversion metric, but it's a number that's like centered around people. And it's really like the number of students who are making money on our platform every single month. And like, that's the thing that feels really good. So if it feels like if folks can do something that affects that outcome, they're really happy, but then they can get creative. And that's the reason I bring it up. So if I tell everyone our goal is to grow this KPI, they can come to me with like different theories on how they might grow that number. And it also gives us a way of like, hey, that sounds like a good thing, but if you can't tell me how it affects this kind of like holistic KPI, maybe they understand the framework that I'll be making decisions. Now, I think that the kind of the qualifier to all that is sometimes there are good initiatives for companies that aren't always internalized in like the bottom line. And I think that's probably a separate conversation to talk about. But by and large, if like everyone in the organization understands like what the end goal is, and then they can come up with creative ways of trying to improve it and drive it. And then that's what they can put on the resume. Like I did X project that helped move X KPI, X amount.
Well, and it also, going back to this feeling like you play a role in that, you're going to be able to speak to it with much more passion and energy around why it mattered and why you're excited about it, which again, going back to being able to land that next gig or land, your whatever full-time gig, whatever we want to call them, it's a key component. Because if you're just like, I showed up and I did the same thing every day and whatever, I see it all the time where people have careers and it's like, I have 20 years of experience. No, you have 6 months of experience on repeat. That's what you have. You're just on repeat. You don't actually have 20 years of dynamic experience. And I think what we're talking about here is actually creating dynamic experiences for people, which funnels career growth. It funnels skill development because people will take maybe a bit more of a risk on this type of a thing. So, but because we could talk about this, I'm telling you, we could talk about this all day long, but I am curious process-wise, because on both sides, I can see, okay, if you're a recent college grad or in college kind of going like, all right, how's this work? Or if you're on the other side, because I work with leaders at organizations all the time who are like, I don't really know where to go find talent, because internally we've got this process. We always thought, well, we create a job rec and then we put it out and then we get 900 applicants and then we screen them and then we go through this and we basically pick based on resumes. But maybe I only have a project and I don't have funding to get a head count for this thing, but I have a need. So how does it work so people from both sides kind of understand it?
Yeah, I guess I can share my screen again for a moment here, Chris. Okay. I can give a really quick overview. So this is the view that a company or a client would have. So you're looking into kind of our talent database. You see my company profile up there. So there's some aspects of this that are similar to kind of traditional kind of functions, right? Okay. So
So it's not so wildly unfamiliar. People would go, I have no idea what this even is.
We didn't need to reinvent the wheel. I think there's going to be some more exciting things that we start working on throughout this year, but we wanted to kind of get like the bread and butter of it working pretty well. So for instance, we have Pangeans here. Here's Julia as an example. Julia's a senior at Clemson. She's uploaded a bunch of her sample work and portfolio pieces onto her profile. So she linked to a personal website here. So you can get a sense of like the quality of work that she's done, which is really what companies want to see these days. So we put that top, really top of the page. She's worked on our platform, so she's actually able to get reviews and kind of badges in areas that she's exceeded expectations. So for companies, really simple. We have a really simple job posting flow. We're really proud of it. So let's say we're trying to hire a social media manager. We have these pre-made templates. So maybe we need 10 hours a week. We're looking at someone to start ASAP, looking to do hourly. Generally, the standard hourly rate on our platform is $22 an hour. Come work with a YC-backed startup and, help us grow our TikTok. We're trying to get away from the whole, like, send me a 3-page job description and job rec.
Oh, I know that like 9/10 of it is just filler that you copy and pasted from another one that you're like, I honestly, this isn't even
so like
really
for instance,
relevant.
And we did that work for you. So for all those templates, we went and we did research on all of the top responsibilities of all the top 36 roles. So we pre-populate you with like what a social media manager should do. A lot of our clients don't know. So a little bit about our company. Again, one of the things that we realize is students liked aspect of internships that gave them some more structure. So we're bringing in a little bit of that, a little flavor of that into here. So, hey, maybe there's an opportunity to give the students some mentorship. There's an opportunity to grow with the company. You'll be included in our stand-ups, and we'll do weekly one-on-ones as well. So I can give you, like, these are things that we found that this talent base really looks for. And when
especially for that audience who's like, I'm just getting into the career market, that stuff matters to me. The ability for growth or mentorship, somebody actually helping me figure out a path ahead.
Absolutely. And nowadays, the companies are the ones that are selling. It's no longer the companies.
Yes, the talent market is hot right now. It's not. It's you got to convince people. You want to come work here, and here's something we can offer you to make it worthwhile.
Exactly. So pick a couple of those. Add a couple of skills. These are again intelligently rendered. This kind of helps talk about like what skills people have, helping create alignment. Next.
Okay, so I'm going to pause. So two ways through it. One, you can kind of go browse things. If you're like, I'm looking for this kind of thing, you can go find folks, kind of look through their things. Or if you're like, I need somebody to do this thing, I need to find somebody. I can post this and basically throw it out to the marketplace and say, hey, I'm looking for somebody who can help me with this.
Exactly. And people can kind of bid on it. So and then you can, gives a little bit more structure. So maybe here it's like, please add a portfolio piece. So you can add screening questions as well that just kind of help you advance.
What is your spirit animal? Something like that.
Yeah. What is
how many marbles to fill the Titanic?
No. There we go.
Really important question.
Really, really important question. And then I submit it for approval. I mean, it's really quite simple. And then after you post it, you basically can browse student profiles and say, hey, like maybe Shania here would be a great fit for this role. I'm going to invite them to the job. You can browse by school. So maybe, I went to Brown. So maybe we're going to hire someone out of Brown University. So I could actually reach out and say like, hey, Sam, you should, apply to this job. After I've posted the job, we have kind of an in-platform almost version of an applicant tracking system. So, I actually posted a role 2 days ago for a growth marketing internship. So I've gotten all these students now to apply to basically come to Pangea. I asked them why they joined and get a little context on them. And I've actually already hired a couple of people. So all this is managed through the platform. Job posts are only up for 10 days. So we're trying to, not have people spend like 3 months hiring for these roles. The average time to hire is less than 10 days on our platform. So we're trying to bring that speed into our system. You can really easily compare and contrast different applications. If I want to, I could send an offer. So let's like hire Carissa here as an example. $15 an hour. I only really want her working for 5 hours a week. I set out the expectations and responsibilities, and then I send the offer. And then all that happens through our platform. And then after you hire someone, you manage them through our platform as well. So like, here's an example, hired an intern, and they're basically logging their hours to the platform. And then I can come in here, get a sense of all the stuff they've done on what day. Tune Day does our TikTok as an example, connect with my credit card, and then run the payment.
So you can even just run it through a P card, something like that. It's not even necessary. I am curious, and again, I know this is very tactical, but I'm thinking about this from a leadership standpoint on the corporate end. Do most organizations work through just like a corporate card? Are they setting this up with procurement so it's actually running that route? How are folks doing it?
Currently, a lot of our clients are smaller organizations. So these are under 25, under 50 startup small. So they put like their company card on it. You can also do ACH. It's very easy. As we think about getting into larger enterprises, what kind of my vision is that this is something that we'd put in the hands of,
because I'm literally picturing procurement departments, if they watch this, going, oh no. Corporate finance is like, wait, they can remove all the bureaucracy and get the stuff done they need with freelancers. Like, to me, I'm going, fantastic. I don't have to wait 6 months to have to deal with all the nonsense.
Well, and what I'd love to see ultimately is, for the individual like product managers, the team managers to be able to like, hey, you have a $1,000 budget a month. We want your help. Like, our recruiting teams are already inundated, and they're honestly more focused 9 times out of 10 on the more senior high level roles. So let's get everyone in the organization involved in cultivating our talent pipeline, particularly amongst emerging talent. Let's have every team in the company have a college student working with them. And it's a great way for these managers to get managerial experience, or aspiring managers, like give them an intern first before you give them a full-time employee.
Right. Before you give them headcount, be like, hey, let's see how you work with somebody on a small project. Again, I think from an upskilling standpoint, leadership is a huge opportunity in just about every company. No, not just about, in every company on the planet. And again, I think sometimes there is that hesitancy of, I know we need to grow this person's team, but we need to see, how do we actually develop them as a leader without having to say, let's give you a head count and, we'll see what happens. Because now this is a person's livelihood. Now, with that, I am curious, though, how does that tie? Because that could create a really bad experience for a recent college grad if it's like, oh, I'm getting, tested out with, kick the tires on new employee here who might be a boss, and it doesn't go so hot. So how do you manage that on both sides? Because it could go well either way. Either the student could go, whoa, I just got draconian boss from, the dark nether. And then on the other side, you might go, well, I just got a, college flunky that would rather play Halo than do the work that they said. So how does that work?
I think it was Kim who made this comment. I think it's where we have an opportunity to educate the students more so. So like when we do the emerging talent program, one of the first things we set up is like, what's the difference between an internship and freelancing? And I was like, in an internship, you have a boss. In a freelance engagement, you have a client. So, if you think about if you had your own business, how would you treat your customers? It's the kind of mindset that we try to imbue in these Pangeans when they're working with clients and companies. And maybe they think they're having an intern, but we try to say like, these are smaller companies. You're working with more inexperienced managers. You need to take more responsibility in getting onboarded and kind of managing your intake. And we give them like a set of questions.
You're your own boss in some ways. It's like, think of it that way.
You're your own boss, and it's your client. And sometimes they can be amazing partners for you and really help create a lot of structure and provide great feedback. And sometimes they don't. So we try to basically help students basically remove a little bit of that and say, hey, this is an experience for you. Take ownership, take initiative, create your own structure, make it easy for them to help manage and work with you. And that's where we found like a lot of receptiveness and ability to kind of like help make these engagements be a lot more successful. Okay. We can't always talk to the client and tell them how to manage, but we can talk to the student and give them tips and tricks and structures and also product that helps them create the right amount of structure so that they can do a good job.
Okay. To help them be successful. Well, and the funny thing is I set that up intentionally to be a little bit legacy and thinking, because I do think sometimes we're like, oh, and you see this now with when the work from home thing happened. There was this idea that like, oh, we let people work from home. They're going to sit around and watch Netflix all day. And it's like, that is not how people, the majority, are there the outliers that yes, somebody might be like that, but the majority of people really want to do great work and contribute and have you go, I love what you did. People don't like to go, here, I did this, and have people go, wow, that really sucks. You're the worst, So they're going to bring their best selves. That is the norm in terms of behavior. So I can see where you setting expectation helps with that, to be like, hey, just think of this as a client versus just, they can fire you. Own this. This is your thing.
And the piece that we got a glimpse of when I shared my screen before, which has now gone away, was the review system. So into the platform, giving the client the opportunity to provide feedback to the Pangea, constructive feedback, so private feedback, and then also ultimately having to go the other way. Like, well, how can we help the client or the manager get feedback from the person they're working with on a consistent basis? I mean, one of the best things that we've done at Pangea, it sounds super corporate, is like do one-on-ones. So the beginning of the year and all last year, I was doing like one-on-ones very regularly with all of my basically team members, like all of them, like all 10 of us. And they have an opportunity to give me feedback and tell me what they need from me and tell me how I can be a better leader for them and or what they expect from me. And I could also give them an opportunity to provide a lot of feedback. And I've kind of I've become almost like my team psychologist in terms of like helping people learn how to like, manage and deal and be their best selves. And that's like, makes such a difference, I find. So and there's so many companies that don't have that kind of structure. So, we ask all the students like, hey, have you asked your client for feedback? And the answer is like, no, or you should. Like give them the avenue to tell you how you can improve so you can actually go take action on it as opposed to letting those things fester. So I think there's a lot.
Well, and I like what you bring up with this though, because this is going back to upskilling people leaders. It is a really great opportunity both ways. One, practice giving feedback. How do you share with somebody who maybe isn't doing something quite right? Or again, how do you walk that line between, is this just personal preference? Like, are they achieving the outcome and I'm just nitpicky because I like, blue ink instead of black ink type? And you're like, really, is this, just shut up, like get over yourself? Or is this really, well, here's an opportunity I see for you because of how you're representing yourself type of a thing. So it's an opportunity for that. But again, coming back the other way, if there's that opportunity for them to share that back, for corporate employees to be able to give new emerging leaders an opportunity to hear from other people, because everybody thinks they're an amazing boss. Oh, I'm the best boss. Well, except to everyone who's ever worked for you. They would disagree with that vehemently. But to be able to not wait until it gets to a point where you're on the verge of, collapsing your organization, to be like, hey, you know what? You kind of are a bonehead, and here's where, and here's what I think you could do differently.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like how to talk to each other has been one of the things I've had our team working a lot on over the last year. Because we're a young team. We all have opinions. Sometimes those opinions are very strongly held. And we had a tendency, everyone's vocal, which I love, and opinionated. But we had a tendency sometimes to devolve into getting a bit combative and argumentative. And that's never productive. Yep. There's a difference between arguing and debating. Debating is something I want us all to do all the time. Arguing is not. And it also comes down to like giving feedback, taking feedback, and like not getting defensive and having everyone being like, I want to improve. So I think, part of it is asking consent for folks like, hey, like, can I provide you some feedback and my thoughts? And like saying, I'm going to give you, as opposed to just giving it. So like creating a space for those conversations is really, really important. And then making sure everyone's receptive to it. And then it's an expectation is also really important. But also like keeping an eye in terms of like, are people arguing and being combative and defensive, or are they debating and having a healthy conversation with like an even tone? Because there's a big difference. And that's the kind of stuff that I've, tried early on to keep a close eye on. And I think we're doing a really good job now. But like 12 months ago, oh my gosh, every week was some new argument about something, and it could be small things. So anyway, those are things that have been important. And also empathizing with other people on your team is really key.
So that's built into this. So again, the new college or early talents creating their profile, you can post these things, you can go find them. Then you're like a match. You're like the eHarmony of early talent for stuff where it's like, hey, here's a match made in heaven. Folks are coming on, you're taking care of that. Now, what do you typically find? Are these long engagements? Do you have people coming in where it's like, hey, this ends up turning into a 2-year thing? Or are these typically short gigs that they float in and out? Do you see trends in that?
Yeah, I mean, it ranges, right? I mean, I think that's one of the beauties of our platform is it's very flexible, right? So we're not tying you into like, this needs to be a 3-month, full-time engagement. We've had companies come and, they post, hey, I'm looking for, I run an ed tech company, and, I want students to basically be my product testers, and I want them to provide me feedback. So I want them to kind of like download the app, use it, give me a survey, and I'll pay them like 40 to 50 bucks. We have some that have like done that and had them become like content creators for their platform, where they're making hundreds of dollars a week consistently for like 6 weeks. And then we've had engagements where they're working with these folks for 12, 18 months, and then the person gets a full-time job offer, which is awesome. So we see a range. I think we're kind of like our bread and butter these days are like trying to find an ongoing need within an organization where having someone more junior level would be helpful. So, I mean, I use this example a lot. Maybe you have a VP of marketing, you have a growth marketing lead, and they're setting strategy and they're running down like strategics and like running your ad sets, but they're not like they're not going to be the ones posting on your Instagram, 5 times a week. So like that's a great use case where you might not need someone full time, but you can bring someone in part time to help you create content and manage your content.
Help you run some of this type of stuff. Okay, so because again, I think that goes back to now one of the things, and I'm curious what you see with this, and this would be my kind of pushback to leaders in the industry who are like, hey, this is great. One of the opportunities that I see, and I'm curious how you work through this, is I know that frequently people don't always know what actually needs to happen. They're like, we need a person for something. We need this work done. And you're like, okay, great. Let's find someone. And that's like, what do you want them to do? Oh, I have no idea. Like, I don't actually know what goes into that. I just know we need this. How do you help folks with that? Because I can imagine that may be fine if you've been doing it for 20 years and you're like, I don't need you to tell, I'll figure it out. But if you're early college, you might be like, I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. How do you help them bridge that? Because I can see that being a challenge.
Absolutely. And that was the reason why we introduced those templates I showed before, where it was like, I need a social media manager, but I don't know what a social media manager does.
So that's designed to also help the people looking for this going, oh, okay, that's kind of the stuff.
Like here's the things that you want.
I should have
and they're all very specific, basically areas of responsibility. So they're all things that you can look at, and someone like saw that and like, okay, here's all the things I need to do this week.
Okay. So versus like the ethereal job description stuff, like marketing strategy,
for help with the social media marketer. Here's a blank box, like bring your own
social media marketing. That's like the description of what you're like. Okay, well that doesn't help. Okay.
And I think the thing that I'd like our team to index more on is like the ROI for organizations. So maybe prompting the companies more like, hey, what are you looking to get out? Like, what do you want this person to accomplish? Like, if this person is successful, what will have changed, or what milestone will you have hit? And I have the Pangeas get hired. I have them ask the organizations that question. Like, what are your goals for the next 6 months? Like, why did you hire for this role? And then you kind of like can piece the two together. But I agree, like these are more junior level talents. Like they don't necessarily have 20 years of experience where they're going to come in and you're like a specialist and they're going to be prescriptive. Like, we're hiring a senior growth marketing lead to come and tell us how to do our growth marketing, not a role that I'm going to go hire someone out of college that hasn't done it.
No, maybe you might bring early career to help that person with some of the execution of it. But hey, you've never done this before. Can you put together our marketing growth strategy? Like, no. Okay. I think that does help folks who may watch and listen to this kind of figure out, okay, where does that make sense? Because you do have to break down the work in that sense where it's like, okay, there are components that make sense for this kind of talent. And there are components where you would go, I mean, you're going to be disappointed if you think, your 5-year strat for the company is going to come from that. Might it be assisted by an early career talent? Does it mean you might not get some great ideas from that engagement? Sure. But be careful not overthinking what these folks can bring to the table.
Yeah, it's all about expectations, right? And I'm not going to say like every job in the world can be replaced by a college student. That's just not realistic. But
and again, I think sometimes people have this idea that like, oh my gosh, a marketplace like this is taking away jobs from folks who've been doing that. It's like, no, because somebody fresh out of school is probably not going to have that kind of experience, but you still need their help. There's a place for them to help with that so they can build the experience to be able to do that down the road.
Absolutely. And that's really where we fit in with these organizations. It's also helped us become better at knowing like what we're good at. Because when companies come and say like, I need someone to like lead my growth marketing strategy, I'm like, you should probably find someone who's worked in the industry for 5+ years to help you set that, or 10+ years. Just like you're not going to, because I don't want people coming in thinking they can get something they're not. But if they come to me being like, hey, I need some blog writers. I have blog guidelines. I already know kind of like what keywords I'm looking for. And I just want people who are based here in the US who like writing and researching and are excited by our industry to kind of write these blogs, and college students are great at writing. Like that's a great use case for us. Like, I mean, we hired 8 blog contributors through our own platform to do exactly that. We set the content strategy and we set kind of like the keywords and the guidelines we want to rank for. And then we give them that brief, and then they're able to go and research and write. So like that's where you got to think about where in your organization this type of talent can be helpful, but it's also helpful not only in the short run, but also in the long run. And I think that's one of the really exciting aspects of working with this type of talent is, yes, I can hire these folks to write blogs for me now, but it's a great way to see that they can execute, deliver on time, deliver high quality work. And then maybe they start prescribing to me, hey, I'm a blog writer, but guess what? I really want to do community management and community growth. Like, can I work with you to help you get more students in other more creative ways? Yes, let's talk about that. And then they can kind of like create their own job for themselves as they go along. And then they graduate and become my next full-time hire.
Okay. I like that. Well, and something you said a little bit back that I think is a really important piece that I think it's beneficial, not just, considering the early talent hires, but just in general, was the point you made about saying, like, what does good look like on the other side of this engagement? I don't think that happens enough, even with existing workforce, where we go, we need you to do this. And people kind of go, I mean, to what end? Like, what does good look like for this? And that's a tough thing. And as a leader, that is your responsibility to think through. I may not know exactly. And I think that's where you can go wrong, is to try and be like, it looks like this and the path to get there is exactly like, well, don't do that, because then you're going to squelch any creativity. But to be able to say, here's where we are today. I really would like this to get us to this point. And I don't exactly know how we do that, but that's the work that I'm looking for you to do, is help me get here. And this is what good looks like. And that's what we're going to measure along the way, is to say, are we making that? Are we on that trajectory or no? And if we're not, well, then let's pivot.
It's setting the X, right? And it's like, for us, like, it's setting that active engagements number. That's a KPI. And it's been like, that's the number we need to grow. And if that number is growing, then great, we're doing something right. And if the number is not growing, then we need to figure out why. And everybody, in my opinion, should be in some way pulling on some thread that comes together into that rope. And if someone's like pulling on a thread in a way that's like pulling the rope the other way, then it's like, we probably shouldn't be doing that. Again, I think there are probably examples we could sit here and think about that aren't always internalized, but I'd also argue that in some way, there's always some way to tie it back to that X. And if you do a good job saying like, here's the goal and here's what we're trying to drive, and then you allow people to be creative and bring their own genius to it and find ways to do it and then measure to see if they're affecting it. I think, that's how I'm trying to structure my organization, as an example, as opposed to being the one that tells them always how to do things. If there's something I can help them out with, or, help them write a better email, then sure. But if they understand like what the goal is, I can kind of like let them run free, and they can be a good measure of themselves. And like, am I actually helping drive that number?
Okay. Well, and I have to ask this, because I think, I'm curious, just with what you do with this, it can be, I'm curious where it lands on the spectrum, because I can see one of the things, and sometimes I've even struggled with this with folks on my team, is that sometimes there's just that work that needs to get done that's really important. It is really important, but it's not necessarily, the cool, neat stuff, but it's like it plays a key role in this. And one of the challenges is sometimes you have folks on your team that I don't want to say they're overqualified, like, oh, I'm too good for that work, but it's just like, you're not really fully utilizing my skills. But I mean, I can do that. I mean, you could hire me to build an e-learning for you, but I wouldn't recommend it, because it's not, I mean, whatever, you get it. So, but I think early career folks, it's like, well, this is something that I actually am hungry to do. But I'm curious, do you get that where sometimes you're like, oh, I don't, I'm beyond this? Or do you, because they're so early in career, do you find they're more open to going, I get it, because I haven't done this before, so that practice is really helpful?
I mean, I don't want to like make a comment that's a generalization. I think it comes down to it's personality.
Okay.
Right. I mean, it's same as it always, like, there are people that will kind of do it if it has to get done. And there are people who think they're above it. And I think there's a person, that's something you also want to like suss out in people when you're working with them. But I think it also comes down to a little bit of what we said, like set an X, right? Like once you know like where you want to go, what you need to do to get there is revealed. And you might not always want to do all the things that you need to do, but you need to do those things,
they have to
regardless
get
of what you
done.
want to get done. I think there are at certain points opportunities to delegate. I'll give you an example, like running payroll on my team and like measuring all the hours of all my contractors and like going in every 2 weeks and just clicking it. Like I did that for my first year, and then I just got too busy, and my Mondays would come, and I sometimes would like forget to do, like I had the money, but then like I would be like late or whatever with content, and I was like, this isn't like, it's not my job. Like, I mean, it is my job and it's important. And I basically ended up hiring a student as a bookkeeper to help me with my month-end reconciliation and running payroll every 2 weeks, because it was like a very definable task that I was able to sit there and train them on and then allow them just to do. Like at a certain point, like we need to do that, but it became like a recurring responsibility and thing that has to get done again and again and again. And that was where I delegated. But every single day, there are things that I do that are like below my pay grade.
Oh, for sure. But I think your point, and I think this is it, and I think this is one of the things that I like about what you've built with this is it gives you an opportunity to provide that transparency on the front end, so that it's like, this is what I need this person for. Because what I have found in my career in learning and talent development is there are people who love to do all sorts of things. And there are people who, things that I'm like, I would die if I had to do that every day. There are people that are like, I love nothing more than that. That is the thing that makes me jump out of bed. And I'm like, really? Okay. I mean, hey, different spaces, different places. Like, that's great. I'm glad. But I think that is a really important piece, that by doing this, you can say, hey, here's what we've got. Like, here's what I need you to do. Are you game? And you're coming in going, yeah, you know what? If I can contribute to what you're trying to pull off here through this activity, sign me up. Sign me up, coach.
And it's like finding what I ask people this when I'm like doing interviewing. I'm like, what are you good at and what do you enjoy doing? And this is like not a theme, not a concept that I came out. It's like finding that zone of genius. It's like hire people to do the things that they're good at, that they enjoy doing. And that's an ideal like environment. Everyone in the organization is doing things that they want to be doing and that they're also good at. And that like they're not doing the things that they're good at, but they don't enjoy doing. We minimize those tasks because those drain energy. And they're certainly not doing the things that they just enjoy doing, but they're not good at. Which is, it happens.
Oh, I know it does. So you're helping bridge that gap, because I think those are the two extremes. And it's like, how do we help people get there? And this addresses a lot of problems that companies have, whether it's engagement, retention, all these things where it's like, well, when you get people doing the things they're good at, that they love, you don't really have to do much for it just to rock, because people are like, I'm loving what I'm doing and I just want to do it because I can. All right. Well, I told you we'd get to the end and we would have just scratched the surface. And so we've arrived at that point where 58 minutes in, we're scratching the surface. So I'm going to cut us out, because if I don't, we're going to go way too long. So I love, again, when we first met and we started talking, I think sometimes it was like learning tech, some people might go, how's this learn? It's like, no, this is future of work. And there's a lot of parallels that I think learning leaders in general can think about, because this process, the way you're thinking about it, this is work. This isn't early talent work or some weird niche. This is just the reality. It just happens to be a really effective way you're doing it in a certain market category.
Well, so I appreciate that, Chris, and it's really been a pleasure talking with you this morning. You have so much knowledge, and it's an honor to be talking with you and learning from you. And it's a privilege to be working at Pangea, doing the things that I enjoy doing, and I think I'm good at. I hope.
You know what? I think you are pretty good at it. So your mom and dad can be proud that, it turned out all right, that he didn't end up going and getting that job that we were pushing him to do. And I think you're in a great space.
I got a real job now, Chris, and I work for myself. I got health care and everything, dental and vision.
I love it. I love it. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your Friday and have a great weekend. Everybody who's watching, listening, thank you for joining. Hope you got something out of this. You should have. And we will talk to you. Just as a heads up, Learning Tech Talks is moving to Tuesdays next week. So different day, different time, same great content. We will see you then. Have a great weekend, everyone.